So have you ever heard about the things that happen to people who pretend they are God or mock Jesus? It's not a good thing. It's not. Let me tell you about some stories, and we're going to start with the ones that are in the book of Acts. In the book of Acts, there was a man named Bar Jesus, and he went around convincing people that he was the Messiah. He would do black magic, and he was a Jewish sorcerer, and he was a false prophet, and he was going around telling everybody that he was the Messiah and trying to convince them by doing magic. Now, there was a governor that Jesus Christ, the Messiah, was trying to convince that he was the Messiah for his own reasons. And this Bar Jesus was getting in the way of that and trying to convince the governor that he was the Messiah. So Jesus blinded Bar Jesus. And he had to be led in front of the governor by, they took his hand and led him to where the governor was standing. And Jesus Christ, the Messiah, had sent in Paul to heal him in Jesus Christ, the Messiah's name, so he could convince the governor of who he was. And it did. And then Paul warned Bar Jesus to never do that again, because there would be a lot worse things that happened to him, right? And then there was King Herod. And, he was not a good king anyway. And after he had, taken out John and imprisoned Peter, and the angels come and helped Peter escape, and then he takes out his guards, all because he was a people pleaser, trying to please his people, because those Jews were like, yeah. They liked the idea of him doing that. And so that was the only reasons why he was doing it. So there was a coming time where he left and he came back, and when he came back, he goes and sits on his throne in front of all of his people, the Jews, and he acts as if he is God. And his people start yelling at him and shouting at him, and they said, "You are compared to Jesus himself." And they're comparing him to Jesus, to Jesus. And just as they're doing that, as they're shouting that, an angel comes and strikes King Herod. And he dies. And worms ate his body. Yeah. Well, that was in the biblical days. Now let me explain to you some people who, in these modern days, have done the same thing in the things that happened to them. Didn't think that could happen, did you? Well, it can. Let me tell you. There was a comedian on Improv. Her name was Heather McDonald. And in her skit, she was mocking God, mocking Jesus. And right after she mocks Jesus, she passes out and falls and hits her head. She did. In front of everybody. And then Marilyn Monroe, Billy Graham had told Marilyn Monroe that she needed God in her life. And she tells Billy Graham, "I don't need God. You can take your God and leave me alone, because I don't need your God." Shortly after that, she loses her life. And then the guy who invented the Titanic, the big, huge Titanic, his name was J. Bruce Ismay. And he made the statement that God himself could not sink the Titanic. Well, God himself sank the Titanic. And you didn't think God could do that? Really? Then there was a scientist by the name of Stephen Hawking, which I'm pretty sure everybody knows about. Well, before he got ALS and passed away, he had told everyone that God is a fairy tale. And he got ALS. And right before he passed away, he said God did not exist. And he passed away. Now, John Lennon went on record saying we are more famous than God himself. And a few years later, he was taken out, shot to his end, by a crazy fan. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't mock God. Because there are things, they tell you about it in the Bible. And then there are people who actually have done it. And look what happened. Look what happened to their lives. I know there was another comedian who also mocked God. And I don't remember what happened to him afterwards. But something bad happened to him. And he put the two and two together. And realized there was a God. And now he is a believer in God. Hallelujah. Well, if you think that it didn't happen because of God, you are sorely mistaken. You cannot mock God and get away with it. You're allowed to not believe in him. That is entirely your choice. He gives you free will. But to mock him? Yeah, no, you cannot do that. Something bad will happen to you if you do that. And you might not chalk it up to God being the cause of it after you've mocked him, but you really should, because he is the cause of it if you mocked him. He has it. Everybody puts God into this fairy tale example of a God. They try to make God to be this pushover, like he doesn't get mad for anything. He's just a loving God. No matter what I do, he's going to love me anyway. No matter what I do, I'm going to go to heaven. No matter what I do, how I live my life, how much sin I commit, my God, he's just going to love me and I'm going to go to heaven because the only thing that matters is I am a good person. None of us are good people. None of us are good people. We are all sinners. That's the truth of the matter. The Bible tells us that. The Bible also tells us that God has a wrath. He gets angry. The Bible tells us he's a jealous God. You can't put another God in front of him. In his place. You can't worship another God. He gets jealous. Excuse me. We are made in God's image. We get angry. We get jealous. We do that because we're made in his image. So if you think that God is this fairy tale God who's not going to do anything when you mock him, isn't going to do anything when you go out and continue to sin, when he isn't going to do anything because you don't believe in him. I mean, whether you believe in him or not, he still gets angry. He still has a wrath. And you are still a sinner. And you still have to reap what you sow, whether you believe in him or not. Those are just truths. Some people call it karma, but it's reaping what you sow, no matter what you call it. If you mock him, you reap what you sow. If you go out and sin, you reap what you sow. And if you think that you're going to go to heaven by not accepting him into your heart and following him, you're fooling yourself. You're deceiving yourself. And that's what the evil one wants you to do. He wants you to deceive yourself. He helps you to deceive yourself. God tells you perfectly in plain language, you have to accept him. So accept him.